Now, despite being elected almost 18 months ago, yesterday was the first time Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer addressed the party in person with his vision for the future.
And we can speak to Sir Keir now. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Can I first ask you about the story which is very much dominating the newspapers and the front pages, which is the murder of Sarah Everard. Yeah. Some details have emerged and everyone's thoughts will be with her family during the sentencing hearing. The details amongst which are that this man showed his warrant card, a serving police officer, falsely arrested her and then killed her. I just wonder, given your background in the Director of Public Prosecutions, whether you're concerned about the impact this will have on women's trust in police.
Yeah, well, it's very hard to find words to describe this case, which is absolutely sickening. It goes to all of our hearts, I think. And even yesterday, when we were in our conference, there was a bit of me thinking about this case. I was Director of Public Prosecutions for 5 years, and I saw lots of cases I'd very much rather I hadn't have seen. But this one is absolutely, I think, something that's gone right to the heart of the British public. And obviously, there's now got to be a review of how on earth this officer slipped through the ranks. I have to say that up and down the country, police officers doing their job will be gutted by this, because, of course, they're working so hard to try and improve confidence, so hard to do the job that they're doing, and they will be absolutely gutted. But like the whole country, my feelings are, my thoughts are with the family, and it's almost impossible to describe or even try to put into words what the family must be going through. We have got to change. I've been arguing for a victims' law since I was Director of Public Prosecutions. We're still talking about it. We need to get on with it and put it into law. And we would do this on a cross-party basis as soon as Parliament gets back in 2 weeks if the government were to put up legislation.
A lot of people say, and they look at this case and they look at others involving women and the risks they run literally on a daily basis. And they say that the criminal justice system, one way or another, is letting women down. That no matter what people say, that women are scared, and they shouldn't be. And why is that allowed? Do you have that same thought process?
I do. I think the Conservative government have completely unravelled and unpicked our criminal justice system. When I first saw the statistic that over 98% of rape cases that are reported to the police don't make it into court, I honestly couldn't believe that it was that bad. I actually asked my team to check it. The government has absolutely, there's a collapsing criminal justice system, and the government is right in the middle of it. We need a victims' law, we need legislation on violence against women and girls, and we need a serious grip on the criminal justice system. You can't have 98% of rape cases not ending up with a charge. It's shocking.
Can I ask you, Sir Keir Starmer, about yesterday and your speech?
Yes.
So why have you gone all personal?
Well, firstly, it was fantastic to be able to speak for the first time since I've been leader of the Labour Party to a conference hall of thousands of people, of human beings. Until now, I had to do most of this virtually. That was really, really important. And what I was trying to do by explaining my background, talking about my dad, who was a tool maker in a factory, my mum, who was a nurse and then very, very ill, and about Penny and John Clough, whose own daughter was murdered in awful circumstances, was to try to get across why I so profoundly believe in an education that works for every child and gets them ready for school, ready for work and ready for life. Why I profoundly believe in well-paid, high-skilled work near where you live. Why I so passionately believe in the NHS, which was my mum's livelihood and then her lifeline, and why I think law and order and security matters. So it was trying to show, I suppose, what it is that motivates me, why I'm in politics, and why these things matter to me, matter to our party, and I think matter to many, many families across the United Kingdom.
I thought one of your things was that you railed against personality politics, and you've made that accusation very clearly at Boris Johnson.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between personality politics, showmanship, and just some honesty about where you've come from. I'm not going to pretend, though, that I'm comfortable with this. It is important for me to explain about my mum and my dad and what we talked about around the kitchen table, because when I talk about working families, I'm not describing something abstract. I'm talking about the family I grew up in. And therefore, that's why I know that a really decent education for your kids is a number one issue. That's why I know that a well-paid, decent, secure job near where you live is a really important issue. It's why I know that the NHS has to be properly funded, because that's what we talked about. That's what mattered to us. And I think that, you know, there are many, many important issues out there that we all need to discuss. But those core issues, I think, are central to what the Labour Party that has, you know, we've really made progress this week at conference, core to what we need to put forward as a credible alternative government.
One of the things you addressed very directly was that you need to, frankly, convince people who voted for the Conservative Party at the last general election to vote for you.
Yep.
And people start looking at your pledges when you are trying to be Labour leader. In amongst those, a lot of people thought that you were in favour of nationalisation. You talked about rail, the energy companies and water. Is that your position now?
Well, look, the first thing to say is that when I was running for leadership, I said that we needed economic justice. Rachel Reeves set that out on Monday. We needed social justice. We set that in spades in the last 4 days. And we needed climate justice. And I addressed that head on yesterday. I also ended every single speech I gave in the leadership election by saying, you've heard some brilliant ideas from all of the candidates. None of them will count for anything if we don't win an election. On the direct point of nationalisation, I've never advocated nationalisation. I don't believe in that top-down model. There are forms of common ownership that I think might work and have worked in the past. I'm a practical kind of leader. I would look at what works. Is it value for money? Does it deliver better services? But we are now in a position 2 years on where my party this week took big decisions to close the door on anti-Semitism, to face the country with big votes on Sunday, and then I was able to frame and put my case to the country yesterday.
OK, can I just hold you on a thought for a moment, if I may, Keir Starmer, because maybe you can explain to me and other people listening who are not clear about the difference in something you said there. And this is relevant now because we're looking at energy, for example, and we know yesterday 3 more companies fell. A lot of people are saying, well, nationalise it. Now, you've used the word common ownership. Now, I'm not sure whether many people understand the difference between nationalisation and common ownership.
Common ownership can be cooperatives, can be all sorts of different models.
But the principle being you take it out of private ownership, is that right?
Before we go any further, I honestly don't think that nationalising the energy companies right now in the middle of a crisis, which is the government's making, is the right way forward. What we've got to focus on for the next few months, and I think most people viewing would be, is the energy supply going to be good for the next 6 months? And how's the government got us into this ridiculous situation where we've got an energy crisis, we've got a fuel crisis, we've got no drivers for lorries, we've got empty shelves. I think most people would say, well, rather than some philosophical discussion, we want to know in practical terms, what is the government going to do to keep the lights on, keep the energy there, and get our fuel pumps back in action? Because lots of people are going to be scratching their heads and saying, how am I going to get to work next week? How am I going to get to a hospital? Or how am I going to visit a sick relative? A teacher or a nurse getting to their job. These are the issues that we need to address head on, and they are all banded together and characterised by a lack of planning by a government that campaigns in slogans and is learning that governing in slogans just doesn't work.
One of your mantras is answering questions directly and also having consistency. I think that would be something you would say. You mentioned in fact, you didn't actually mention Jeremy Corbyn, did you? You talked about coming to the nation with a manifesto that was not serious. Now, A lot of people listening to what you said thought you stood behind the manifesto that Jeremy Corbyn brought forward, and you were part of his senior cabinet. Did you think then that he did not have a serious manifesto?
Well, I am absolutely clear. I will always support a Labour government over any alternative. And I've supported the Labour Party at every single election since I've joined the Labour Party back when I was 16. So did I support the Labour Party in 2019? Yes. Did I support it in 2017 in that election? Yes. Did I support it in 2015 under Ed? Yes. Did I support it under Gordon in 2010?
Okay, can I phrase that question slightly differently then?
This is not unusual in our party. All of our MPs and all of our supporters always support the Labour Party because we know that a Labour government is always better than the alternative. This is not unusual. It is what we do across our whole movement. Every single MP supported the Labour Party at last election, including me.
Can I phrase that question a little differently then? Because you're presenting yourself as the Prime Minister in waiting with integrity. Now, had I interviewed you, and possibly I did during the course of Jeremy Corbyn's election campaign, and said, do you think your manifesto is serious? Would you have said, no, it's not serious? Because integrity has a part to do with it. You're talking about party loyalty, but it seems to be there's a bigger question, which is about trust and integrity. And I don't recall you saying that that manifesto was not serious.
Look, the test of that manifesto is what happened on election day in December 2019. And what happened on election day is that manifesto was roundly rejected.
And you knew it was rubbish.
Just hear me out. I'm not going to let the Labour Party go through that again. I'm determined that we will change our Labour Party and make it fit for government. That's why we took really tough decisions this weekend. People were saying to me, is it right, Keir? Are we going to make these changes? Are you not going too quickly? It is always right to press on to change your party so that it can face the country. That's what we did. That's what I set out in my speech yesterday, because if you've lost in 2019 really badly, we've lost 4 elections in a row. The idea that you don't need to change, that you just give it one more go, is profoundly wrong. We've now got a positive case to put. We've got a party that was applauding me. One of the reasons my speech went on for longer than I had anticipated is because there were so many standing ovations, because our party wanted to get behind the change that we've brought about in our party and the opportunity now to put that credible alternative plan to the country at the next general election.
It's also because you had hecklers, and some of the time that people were drowning out the hecklers, and people will maybe have seen some of those moments. I mean, do you feel like this morning, as you've sat back and thought about how it played out, that you have laid a part of your critics within your own party? Have you put them in their place? Is that one of the changes that you think has happened?
Well, I can't do better than what I said in response to one of the people shouting at me, which is you can shout slogans or you can change lives. And I profoundly believe that the Labour Party is there to change lives. It's why we were created, not to be in opposition to, but be in government. Shouting slogans is all very well, but it doesn't change a thing. And so, you will have seen 1 or 2 people shouting. Actually, the vast majority in the hall were absolutely with me in what I'm doing with the Labour Party to make sure we're facing the country, putting forward that alternative case for government. And how we need it just at the moment. We've got a crisis of energy, crisis of fuel. We've got food bills going up, energy bills going up, universal credit. £1,000 is about to be taken away from 6 million families who can barely make ends meet. And we've got a cost of living crisis. We need that alternative, and it's really important that we've got our own house in order and put ourselves in a position to make that case to the country.
So, Keir Starmer, thank you for your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.